The epic Fletcher-class destroyers of World War II. Fast, powerful, and deadly, these warships were the backbone of the U.S. Navy's destroyer fleet, feared by their enemies and revered by their crews. With speed, power, and cutting-edge technology, they fought in some of the most intense battles of the war. From the Battle of the Atlantic to the Pacific Theater. These ships served with distinction, taking on enemy submarines, aircraft, and surface vessels. They played a pivotal role in securing victory for the Allies. Today, we will take you on a journey through history, exploring the incredible stories of these awesome machines and the courageous sailors who manned the Fletcher-class destroyers.
Thank you for checking out Museum Ship Mafia. My name is Ken Stano, and we've got a special broadcast for you tonight. Typically, Museum Ship Mafia occurs on Wednesdays, but we've got an anniversary coming up, or actually occurring today. It's the 80th anniversary of the launching of the USS Kidd, the Fletcher-class destroyer, on display in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So later on in a little bit, we're going to have Tim Nesmith and Park Stevenson from the USS Kidd Veterans Memorial. Like I said a few moments ago, my name is Ken Stano with the YouTube channel History X and historyxchannel.com. Thank you for watching tonight. Another live crossover broadcast, but like I said, this one is special. We've got, I think, at least 4 YouTube channels and hopefully visitors from the Museum Ships Facebook group for this 80th anniversary launching of the USS Kidd. People helping me tonight. First and foremost, we've got Connor Kilgore, who is one of the admins from the Museum Ships Facebook group. He is flipping the levers, spinning the dials. He'll be monitoring your questions and comments behind the scenes. So we're happy to have Connor on board with us. And I'm going to be bringing up, let's see here. So that's Connor right there. So he's, like I said, one of the admins of the Museum Ships Facebook group, and he'll be helping us out tonight. And then we also have helping us out the guys from the Buffalo Naval Park, and that'll be Shane Stevenson and Stephen Tedesco. Shane Stevenson is the curator and director of collections at the Buffalo Naval Park. Stephen Tedesco, the educational director. Are you guys all clicked in and ready to go?
Yes, sir.
Ready to roll.
All right. And let's see, moving on. We also helping us out tonight, we're going to have John Epp from the USS Slater. John Epp is the curator at the USS Slater in Albany, New York. The USS Slater is a destroyer escort and a pretty cool museum ship, like I said, on display there in Albany, New York. To learn more about the USS Slater, check out ussslater.org. John, are you all clicked in, ready to go?
I am strapped in, sir.
You always have good audio, I have to say that. All right. Fantastic. All right. And like I always say, we cannot do this. We can't do broadcasts like this without subscribers, without viewers. What's the point? So we do this for you guys. Please submit your comments and questions. Let us know what you're curious about. If you hear something, if you need clarification, if there's something you always wanted to know about Fletcher-class destroyers, throw your comments in there. Like I said a few moments ago, we've got Connor Kilgore monitoring those behind the scenes. So he'll be bringing those up if we need to talk about those directly. And just let us know where you're tuning in from, where you are geographically. I hope we've got Chopper 73 from Australia. He always seems to be the furthest away. But let us know where you clicked in from. Did you find us on the USS Slater's YouTube channel, the Buffalo Naval Park's YouTube channel, maybe History X? If one of you guys are a subscriber of my channel, fantastic. Maybe you're watching on the USS Kidd, the Museum Ships Facebook group. I mean, it just keeps growing. So we got a lot of moving parts tonight, and I'm just happy to have anyone watching. Let us know what the temperature is where you're located. I'm in Minneapolis, and we're 40 degrees. So we're going to be bringing Tim and Parks on down in Baton Rouge. I'm sure it's going to be warmer down there. Looks like we got someone tuning in from Mexico, so that's really cool. All right, so let's get started. For those of you that are familiar with Museum Ship Mafia, you've got the USS Slater and the Buffalo Naval Park, and I really want to hear what's the latest news there. So Shane, Stephen, what do you guys have going on now that you've been open?
Shane, go ahead. You can go.
Oh,
no, go ahead.
Okay. Oh, sure. All right. No, please, you. Well, yeah, we've started celebrating our 80th specifically of the Sullivans. We have a lot of outreach going on. We're going to be doing some filming for World of Warships for their longest night in a museum thing that's coming up. I have a lot of presentations coming up. We have a book coming out, historic picture book. Wait a second.
You're going to have the guys from World of Warships filming over there at the Buffalo Naval Park?
I don't know how it's going to work yet, but and maybe some of the other guys at the Kidd and the Slater are involved in this. But I think what we're going to do is we're going to do a half-an-hour video. So Stephen and I are going to have to walk around for about a half an hour, do some filming, and then we are going to do a live session, and it's something for the longest night at the museum, I think they call it, and I think it's scheduled for May 18th. Okay. So I've been working on that, and I've got a couple interns working in the collections now, helping me with the Sullivan artifacts. Still finalizing the insurance report for the loss appraisal of the stuff that it was lost on the Sullivans. So yeah, it's pretty busy from my perspective.
What's going on, Stephen?
So I had a meeting with WNED the other day, which is our PBS channel. We got some good news about the 2 Wars video. They're going to be airing it, and looks like we're going to be making more episodes to that as well. So kind of busy there. And then Wednesday, I get to head out to Virginia to Fort Lee for the redesignation there. So I'm looking forward to that as well. A lot of the people that I worked with on the 2 Wars video, some of them will be there. So it's kind of like, it's going to be great.
You sent me a text earlier that do you guys have a video also going live at 9:30 tonight?
Yeah, so we had our 80th celebration of the launch on April 4th, and we have a video that's premiering, kind of just like a little bit of a background story of the Sullivans and how the ship basically got to Buffalo. And Shane, you want to jump in there on that?
Yeah, and I mean, it really ties it well together because we involve the great-great-granddaughter of Alita Sullivan, and so there's a nice split screen at the very end that Stephen clipped together, and that will premiere on our channel at 9:30. And then earlier today, we flew we're flying the Jolly Roger flag for the USS Kidd, and so we did a video of that, a very quick video. It's very informal. We stopped the filming, and I said,
yeah. John and I got to hang out in Syracuse on Monday night.
I saw you
night of play at the.
Is that the first time you guys have met?
Museum of Science and Technology. Yeah, that's the first time we met in person. Yeah, we were at the Museum Association of New York conference, and I don't want to steal the thunder from John because he was more important at that conference than I was.
Well, let's hand it off to John. What's the latest with the Slater, and tell us about that conference real quick.
Yeah, so we opened just a few weeks ago. Attendance has been pretty good for April. It's always low, but we've started our overnights again. We've already had a few. Our new shoreside gift shop has been installed, and they're just working out a few last minute things, and then hopefully in the next couple of weeks we can start moving into it, which will be nice. And yeah, Stephen and I went to the Museum Association of New York conference over the weekend. I was on one of the panels, and we hung out Monday night at a children's museum.
Well, excellent.
Sure, you guys did.
All right.
No, it's fun. They have this like big IMAX theater globe type thing,
it was
which
pretty
is pretty cool.
Oh yeah, that's...
Yeah, I love those things.
And what's
anything
going
else
on with
going
you,
on
Ken?
with History X?
Yeah, just what's going on with you?
Channel just keeps growing.
Good.
Approaching 40,000 subscribers. Always grateful to have
Wow.
more people jump on board, and
You said
it's
40,000?
humbling. 40,000, yeah.
Weren't you at like
right now,
11,000 when we started this whole thing?
no. Shane,
Yeah,
where
you were just
where
at
were-
12,000 like 3 months ago or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
12,000 at the beginning of the year. Now it's at 37. Probably hit 40,000 in another week or so. So it just, you
You've
know
gained
what?
almost 20,000 subscribers in a few months.
Yeah.
What? I don't know, but people love this stuff. I get a lot of comments. It just keeps growing and it's humbling. So, and hopefully that translates to more viewers here this evening. We already have 42, so that's pretty cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
Well, thank
that's
you.
awesome.
And
Yeah,
like
that's
I
awesome,
always
Ken.
say, thank you very much. And when you see Shane or hear about Stephen and John meeting up for these different, I mean, a lot of work goes into keeping these museum ships going. And I can't say this enough. One of the simplest yet most effective ways that anyone watching tonight can support what it is that Shane, Stephen, and John do, simply get on their YouTube channels, get on their Facebook pages, follow their work, get on YouTube and click like and subscribe. It's again one of the most simplest yet most effective ways to support their work. So please don't pass up that opportunity. And when it comes to Museum Ship Mafia, if you want an audio version of this podcast, search for Museum Ship Mafia on your favorite podcast platform. So, all right, let's get to it. What we've got going on special for you guys tonight is a special episode, and we're going to be talking the majority of the time. We're going to be talking about the USS Kidd, museum ship, Fletcher-class destroyer museum ship on display in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. It's the 80th anniversary of the launching of the USS Kidd during World War II. And I'm pausing here because I want to pull up. They've got a pretty cool website as well. And so definitely check out the USS Kidd's website. I'm going to see if I can get that address for you. Where the heck is it? Oh, here it is. It's simply usskid.com. And so tonight we're going to have, and the other thing I want to say also, if you're interested in supporting the USS Kidd, obviously you can get to their website. They've got a donation location there. But something special, something new that we're doing tonight, in the lower right-hand corner of History X for this broadcast, you can see we've got, YouTube has a donation button where they'll donate 100% of the proceeds, get the Kidd, USS Kidd into dry dock. And it's something we've never done before, but you can definitely check it out. We're going to be doing more of this in the future. But now that History X has hit a certain size subscriber base, we now are able to collect donations. So if you want to donate $1, $5, don't hesitate to do that. Throw your support behind the USS Kidd. Head over to History X and you can check that out. Let's see. Moving on. So we're going to talk to a guy by the name of Park Stevenson. We've had him on in August. He's been down to the Titanic. He's a fascinating guy, and he is a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy. He's also discovered here. Let me back up a little bit. Where's Parks? There's Connor. There's Parks. There he is. So yeah, he's a really interesting guy. We had him back on in August. It was a great time for us. Learned a lot. And he is not only a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy with over 20 years as a naval officer, he's also a deep ocean explorer. Like you saw down there, he has been down to the Titanic. And more recently, he has also been part of the expedition to discover and explore the USS Johnson, the Fletcher-class destroyer that went down during the Battle of Leyte Gulf, part of Taffy 3. And he also was on the expedition, same team, to discover the wreck of the USS Samuel B. Roberts. So, without further ado, let's get Parks in on the discussion. Parks, how you doing? Are you all clicked in?
I am clicked in. If you could see and hear me, then I evidently am.
Yeah, and along with Parks, we also have, can't forget, Tim Nesmith, who is the ship supervisor for the USS Kidd. There's everybody. All right, so great to have you guys with us tonight. And like I said, because of this special, or for this special episode, it is the 80th anniversary of the launching of the USS Kidd. So what do you guys have special going on at the Kidd to celebrate this?
Well, first of all, let me correct you on one thing.
Oh, great. Well, wait, are we already doing corrections? Did I already screw up?
We have a program this year to celebrate the commissioning dates for each of 5 Fletchers, 4 of which are still with us. One is still with us, but she's a little underwater at the moment. The reason why we selected the commissioning dates instead of the launching dates, when I was in the Navy, I became used to the fact that a birthday for a ship was usually considered the commissioning date. The reason for that is that's when the ship comes alive, when the crew comes aboard and brings this ship to life. Prior to a commissioning date, she's metal. She's put together, she's launched, she's not complete. She still has to go through fitting out. And she doesn't have a lot that would bring a ship to life. So we're celebrating the various commissioning dates of these 5 ships this year. Kidd happens to be the first date today, the 23rd of April, and Cass and Young will be the last one on the 31st of December. So we've got over half a year of celebration to do to concentrate on these Fletchers. And each one of these, and on each birthday, we're going to concentrate on the birthday girl. Today it's going to be Kidd. And next will be the USS Charette, which is now the Greek ship Belos over in Athens. And then the Sully gets their turn to tell us their story. Then we'll visit Johnston at the bottom of the Philippine Sea, where she'll tell us about the Fletchers that were lost during the war. And then finally, Cass and Young at the end of the year to tell us about her World War II exploits. So
when I mentioned the fact that the ship's, being launched, what you're basically saying is, forget that. I mean, it's an important day, sure, but more importantly is the commissioning day. That's what really matters to a museum ship or to any ship.
I mean, that's the perspective I bring from the Navy. That's what we always viewed as when a ship actually comes to life. A ship will develop a personality over its lifespan. I've seen good ships and I've seen bad ships. And usually it's the ship takes on the personality and is a reflection of the personality of the crew. So, the commissioning date's what we usually consider to be a ship's birthday, so to speak.
Got it.
And Kidd is 80 years old today.
As of the commissioning date.
As of the commissioning date.
Okay. Now, you actually, let me pull this picture up. You recently became the executive director of the USS Kidd. That was in the fall, correct?
In October, yes. I've been here 6 months now aboard Kidd.
Yeah. And for those of you that aren't aware, Parks has a pretty active Facebook page. I strongly recommend you follow. It's Park Stevenson Explorer, correct?
Park Stevenson Explorations is my public page, yes. My private page is for close friends and family who aren't as enthralled by this subject or the various manias that I have. So I use my public page, Park Stevenson Explorations, to just basically regurgitate everything that I find interesting. And hopefully some other people do too.
When you post pictures like this, I find it all pretty interesting. And this is, Shane Stevenson, would also post similar pictures, you know, of him crawling around the Little Rock or the Sullivans, that type of thing. So I find this stuff kind of fascinating. So you've been there, I'm going to say around 6 months now.
6 months. I first came to Kidd in 2020 when I was preparing to dive and go look for the USS Johnston. I came to Kidd to study here because at that time we didn't know what condition we would find the wreck in. And sometimes wrecks can be torn inside out, and there's just little details that you have to go on. So I needed to be as familiar with the ship as possible. And we went out and we found Johnston. And then I had to come back to Kidd a couple of times to film a couple of documentaries, and one thing led to another. And now I'm here responsible for the ship, along with a great crew that we have here in Baton Rouge. So they call me the executive director. I consider myself commanding officer of USS Kidd, responsible for ship and crew.
Well, and Tim, you're the ship superintendent. How long have you been with the Kidd?
Ooh, his audio.
Oh, Tim, your audio. Are you muted?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you go. Yep,
Good.
nice. All right. Yeah,
Um,
so how long have you been with the Kidd?
Before ship superintendent, I've held several titles. I go all the way back to 1995 when Tim Rizzuto was here.
Oh, wow. Okay. So
I'm old.
Well, I mean, so what have you seen in, let's say, 95? So you're talking about, geez, approaching 30 years?
Yeah, closing in on it.
So what have you, what kind of changes have you seen on the Kidd? Of course, we're going to be talking about how the Kidd got its name, the the namesake, that type of thing. We're going to dive into some other Fletcher-class destroyers, but real quick, I mean, I'm always fascinated when it comes to the museum ship world. What kind of changes have you seen in that kind of time?
On Kidd herself, Rizzuto had done most of the heavy lifting by the time I got here. I think one of the last major things that he accomplished before he left for Slater was in 97, loading the torpedo tubes for the first time since she got to Baton Rouge. Since then, it's mostly detail work, inching her ever so slightly closer to her target date of August 14th, 1945. For me, the one of the biggest exciting things that we got to do was in October 2019. We had volunteers out in Arizona fabricate a blast shield to sit on top of the torpedo tubes. And then they brought it over and we got that installed. So that was really the last major physical piece that was missing from her World War II configuration. If we're lucky, when we go to dry dock, we're gonna try to make another major internal change to her. But we'll talk about that as we get closer, and hopefully we get more funding for it.
Well, let's jump into the reason we're here tonight. We're here to talk about Fletcher-class destroyers, namesakes, their personalities, that type of thing. And Parks, did you want to get into how the Kidd got this as its?
Hey, Ken, could I interject real quick?
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Parks, would you mind just quickly explaining why you've chosen to also include Johnston? Because I know we're going to get a few questions and comments saying, well, it's not a museum ship.
Yeah, we're including Johnston because I wanted to. I mean, it's that simple. A museum ship exists to educate the public, I think, is one of the basic functions of a museum ship. And Johnston taught me the wreck of Johnston, through a physical analysis of the wreck, taught me more about that last battle off Samar, popularly known as the last stand of the Tin Can Sailors, than historians have been able to pull out of official reports, personal accounts, and things like that. There's more about Johnston's movements that we know now because of the damage that can be seen on the wreck itself when you align them with the personal accounts. In other words, it gives more weight, more relevance to a lot of the personal accounts We cross-reference with the Japanese sources, and essentially we've learned much more about the Battle of Samar. We've basically rewritten a lot of the history of it on that. Now, of course, I haven't yet written the book, but we're trying to leak some of it out in documentaries. And I did put all of this into a rec analysis report that I submitted to the Navy, the Naval History and Heritage Command. So in effect, Johnston is a museum ship. Now, she's got a low attendance record. There's only been 3 visiting there, but she's not dependent upon ticket sales. But she is educational, even though she is currently underwater. And me personally, I've dived on many wrecks. I've dived on Titanic. I've dived on a Japanese midget submarine off Pearl Harbor. I've dived off Titanic's sister ship Britannic. I've dived off, I've never really formed a personal bond with any of those wrecks. To me, I was in data collection mode. I was down there as a technical advisor trying to draw as much information I could out of the wrecks. Johnston was different. As soon as I saw her down there, I felt a personal connection with that ship, and it hasn't left me. Johnston literally changed my life. After the Johnston dive, I basically left my career as an aerospace engineer and didn't really know what I was going to do with my life afterward. I just knew that I had to continue dealing in the deep. But then the opportunity at the Kidd came along, and to be responsible for keeping one of our remaining few Fletchers with us, and one that's still in her World War II configuration. There's no way I could turn that down. So literally, Johnston changed my life. It made me a museum guy, which I wasn't before, and it's educated me. So I consider Johnston a museum ship, and I think she deserves a spot during this celebration. Besides, she's going to represent the lost Fletchers in our schedule of events.
And the reason for Hull is she hasn't been discovered yet, right?
We haven't found Hull yet. Maybe one day. I have a search plan laid out for her, and I suspect if we do find Hull, she's going to take over the mantle of world's deepest shipwreck. Johnston was world's deepest shipwreck when we found her in 2021. When we went back in 2022 and found Samuel B. Roberts, she was 400 meters deeper. So now she's the world's deepest shipwreck. My search plan places Hull actually down inside the Philippine Trench. Johnston and Sammy B landed on the western edge of the trench. And I think she's going to be down more around 8,000 to 9,000 meters. And if that's the case, I don't think there is a wreck that would be deeper than USS Hull. And I look forward to telling that story. And there are plans afoot to develop the kind of search sensors and vehicle to go down to that depth. Maybe the next few years or so, maybe 2026 will be the earliest. We'll see.
I got a quick question for you, Parks. And you've corrected me on pronunciation in the past and everything like that, which I always appreciate. You said you've dived on the wreck. Is it dove or dived?
You don't use dove.
No,
Dived.
it's dived.
I can't explain it. It's what I was taught. You never really say you dove on a wreck. I know it sounds right, but it's not a term that I hear often in the diving world. Now, I don't know if it's correct or not. I'm just parroting what I've learned.
Well, and you corrected me on one before, which was I would always say, anyone that served on a submarine was a submariner. And you corrected me and you said, no, it's not submariner, it's submariner. And
yes, the guys in the boats are not submariners. They are mariners. They are submariners. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So, all right. And if I hear any other weird terms that I want clarification on, hope you don't mind me asking.
That's fine.
Let's see. All right. So we're going to get going on what I guess I would call the Kidd's pirate. What do you want to call it? Nickname, moniker? I don't know. But
personality.
personality. That's good. All right.
It's
Identity.
Yeah. I'm going to start off, and then Tim's going to take over. Everybody thinks that the Kidd is named after Captain Kidd, the infamous pirate. That's wrong. First of all, Captain Kidd wasn't even a pirate. He was a privateer and a man who became a scapegoat for people in power, position, and money. Who hasn't heard that story before? But the result of that is he became known as a very infamous pirate. But that's not what the USS Kidd is named after. She's named after Admiral Isaac C. Kidd, the commander of Battleship Division 1, or the USS Arizona, was killed at Pearl Harbor when blast destroyed the bridge. And I don't believe they found anything of Admiral Kidd except for his Naval Academy ring fused to a bulkhead. That's what she was named after. But at the same time, this new young crew that was taking over this new Fletcher destroyer, they were more thrilled by what was then a very popular character in cinema, the swashbuckling pirates like the Errol Flynns and other action stars of the period. They wanted to be that swashbuckling, daring-do pirate that goes out on the high seas and takes what they want and without apology. And they wanted to follow in the steps of Captain Kidd, a figure that was basically influenced the movie Treasure Island. His story influenced the movie Treasure Island and was basically represented by other movie stars of the period. And one might think, well, isn't this kind of disrespectful to Admiral Kidd, whom the ship is actually named after? Well, this is where the widow of Admiral Kidd, Inez Kidd, came in, and she knew that these young boys were going off to fight in a horrific war, and that they would need all the courage and daring do that they could muster. And so as a morale issue, she supported the crew's desire to emulate the pirate Captain Kidd. And she went to the Navy Department and petitioned them to allow Kidd to fly the pirate flag and paint a pirate on her stack. And she got that permission. That's why USS Kidd is the only ship in the U.S. Navy authorized to fly the skull and crossbones flag. Now, I know that ships, even up to modern day, still fly pirate flag during crossing the line ceremonies. Pirate flags are a tradition in the submarine force. They'll often fly a skull and crossbones flag after return from deployment. The Navy kind of looks the other way on that. But Kidd was officially authorized to fly that flag. And she's passed that authorization, that legacy, down to two namesakes, DDG 993 and DDG 100, who are the latter of which is currently in service in the Navy. And it's a bit ironic. She'll come back off of the new DDG 100 USS Kidd will come back off a deployment flying a huge pirate flag after she's completed anti-piracy operations in either Caribbean or Somalia. But it's a proud tradition that was started in 1943, and it carries through to today. And then Tim can tell of specific instances where Kidd's crew, after they were given the authority to or permission to emulate a pirate, how they kind of lived up to that reputation in practice.
Go ahead, Tim. What do you got?
Oh, there's so many examples. There's Amnuk is commenting on one of them in the comment section. They arranged to have an ice cream machine, and there's a couple of different stories about the ice cream machine, how they got it. One that I was unaware of, Roseanne Geip, our previous director, brought it to my attention, that she had learned that a women's club had bought the ice cream machine for them and donated it to the crew. The story that I heard from some World War II vets was that they passed the hat around while they were in Brooklyn while the ship was fitting out. And they wanted to get an ice cream machine, and destroyers are too small to have ice cream machines. You know, you have them on the bigger ships, the battleships, the hospital ships, the carriers. And Shane may be able to tell me Little Rock may have an ice cream machine. I don't know. But they passed the hat around. They had it. They bought it, and the officers were still living on shore at this point. They have moved aboard the ship, and they had it delivered after the officers left at the end of the day. And they get it there, and it's dropped on the dock. And they look at it and measure it, and they're like, "Oh man, this isn't going to fit through the hatches. It's too big." And so they passed the hat around again, grabbed a little more cash, went over, grabbed a yard bird out of the shipyard at Brooklyn Naval Shipyard, and said, "Hey, buddy, you got a cutting rig and a welder? Yeah. You want to make a little extra money? Yeah, sure. Come over to Slip so-and-so, and, you know, we got a job for you." And when he got over there, they had already marked out, you know, the outline on the hull, and they had him cut into a brand new Fletcher-class destroyer, pull a plate out, slide the ice cream machine in, put it back in place, weld it, and he took off with the money, and they got the grinders out, ground the welds down smooth, put a new coat of paint, bam, we got an ice cream machine. And their first CO, Alan Roby, was no fool. He came in the next morning. Here's a perfectly rectangular patch of new paint. Ship's already been in the water for a couple months. And, you know, you get a little bit of deterioration, ultraviolet fading, all of that. And he looks at it and it's like, something's not right. Kind of figures out from the outside of the ship where it's at, goes down. There's an ice cream machine. He just laughs, turns around and leaves. And they said, you know, he was smarter than we were because we didn't realize these bigger ships have machines, so their supply list has ice cream mix automatically in there on deliveries. We don't have that because we don't have an ice cream machine. So they had a machine that was worthless because they had no mix. So with the comment, did they ransom pilots? They did ransom pilots, but most destroyers did that. And it was kind of a thank you from the carriers to you know, hey, you brought our pilot back. Here's some ice cream for the crew. So it really wasn't ransoming for them, for Sullivans or for any of the others, Cass and Young, but our guys were a little more flamboyant about it. They made it, hey, you want your pilot back, you better give us some ice cream, buddy, that sort of thing. And then when they would bring mail through the fleet, because they would give the mail bags off from the supply ships that are meeting them halfway. And the mail bags then on a destroyer is nimble enough to maneuver around the task force, and they get alongside, and while they're setting up the pulley system between the ships, they strike up a conversation. Hey, Shane, where are you from? Toledo. Oh, okay. I'm from Baton Rouge, back and forth. And they slip two questions in. You have any fresh fruit? You have any ice cream mix? And if they got a hit on it, then the minute the mailbag gets attached and they start pulling it across, about halfway across, all of a sudden, oh no, it's jammed. Oh. Guys want their letters from the girlfriends, right? They want that perfumed letter. And they're like, hurry up, get it fixed. We're going to lose the mail. Hey, you know what would help? What? Put a bag of ice cream mix on the top rope. And they would run, grab the ice cream mix, put it on, and oh, it's working. And they pull it across. And they got such a reputation that if they saw, let's say Little Rock is out there, they see this pirate up on the stack coming their way with mail, and they got the pirate flag flying. They pass the word down the way. Hey, buddy, get that new guy out there. He's new. He hasn't run across this. That's the Kidd. No ice cream mix, no fresh fruits. And she got a really bad rep. The Korean crew kind of took the brunt of what the World War II crew did, getting into so much trouble with those shenanigans.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow, that
like
is a
the
good-
story of this hat.
Like the story, and there's more. I mean, we've got tons of stories going through the Cold War for that.
Is there any evidence left of where the ice cream machine was?
Oh, it's still here.
Oh, you
Really?
still? No, they never took it out.
We
still
still
have
do, but the big thing. Okay, so Tim told a great story that may or may not be real, because we don't know where the weld marks are for this supposed hole cut into the side of the hull.
Really?
So maybe it isn't. There's other stories too that in one Pacific port, there was an ice cream machine headed for a certain capital ship, and the Kidd crew learned about this and did a little requisition swapping and ended up taking the ice cream machine themselves. So there are different stories. We can't confirm any one of them 100%. But the point is that the crew wanted what the crew wanted, and they stooped to various means to get it. And they did this throughout the entire war.
Shane,
And there is evidence that there were at least 2 machines, because there's wreckage photos from the kamikaze attack, and it looks very much like up on the steam tables in the food service line where they took shrapnel damage. It looks like pieces of an ice cream machine are just piled up with other busted up pieces of wreckage. So multiple stories could be true.
Yeah.
Shane, what was your question?
Yeah, that was my question. So for the Sullivans, our ice cream machine is right next to the steam line, just after our mess decks on the port side. Is that where yours is, or
right in the corner, right next to the hatch?
Yeah. Okay.
Right on top of the tank.
Well, so the Sullivans does or did have an ice cream machine?
It did. Unfortunately, my stories, apocryphal or true, I don't have many stories about our ice cream machine. So I just know that it's there. I would potentially guess that it was maybe put in the refit in 1945, or maybe for the Korean service in 51. But yeah, I do not have, or at least have not found yet in our records, anything that talks about our ice cream machine. But it's period correct. And now I'm wondering how we got it in, at some point.
Well, let's put it this way. Ice cream is a prized possession among these crews, especially aboard a destroyer. They see the capital ships with all the luxuries, and they want some of it themselves, and especially on a destroyer in the Pacific to have ice cream. It doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah. Yeah, and to answer Tim's question, sorry, John, to answer Tim's question, we did have an ice cream machine on Little Rock, and on our YouTube channel, I just did a video trying to solve the mystery because we currently do not have it. So we reached out to the Little Rock Association, and I got a few responses, and then tried to track it down using some blueprints, some decking blueprints and furnishing reports to try and find out where it was. But I actually never located it. So I gave 2 or 3 potential areas. But
yeah, I remember seeing that video where you actually were like hunting it down, but I guess I missed it. So it's not currently on the Little Rock. Correct.
Yeah, it is not there. Maybe they gave it to the USS Wisconsin, like our gun plot computers.
There was a question that I wanted to throw up here. I lost it. It was about a gun or some type of weapon being donated from. Oh, here it is. Here it is.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And Tim would be the best person to answer this question.
So this is from Museum Ships, and of course, we're happy to be partnering with the Museum Ships Facebook group tonight. Connor, the admin, is pulling the levers and spinning the dials behind the scenes. He's the one that's answering a lot of these questions. But I saw this, and yeah, Tim, you can answer this?
Absolutely. Yeah, this goes back to Rizzuto's early days on board Kidd. And John, you can probably attest to this. Tim probably has a list of equipment that Slater still needs, and he keeps it handy just within arm's reach at any time, I'm betting. He used to do that here.
The problem is the list is in his head.
The list is in his head? Okay,
Yeah.
You need to hold him upside down and shake it out of him. But, before he gets too forgetful. But yeah, he used to have a list here at Kidd. And at some point, a couple of Dutch naval attaches came through town. I don't know why. I hear various stories. But they came aboard Kidd, and she's still a rust bucket, still trying to find equipment. Her decks are bare, and they asked, so what, you're trying to go back to World War II, what do you need, and what's your plans for finding? And he whips out the list and he says, this is what we're looking for. And they started looking down, and they're like, oh wait, you need 20 millimeters, you need singles or twins? And twins, we've got a whole bunch of them in the field behind our reserve center outside of Amsterdam that are rotting away. We'll see if we can find some for you. And it's like, well, why do you have 20 millimeters that are rotting away in a field? Why are they all there? Oh, there's tons of them. The Allies just left them there. They were obsolete at the end of the war. And so they go away. And from what I understand, about a year later, you get a phone call from New York City, the Dutch ship Zuidekris. And my apologies to any folks from the Netherlands listening. I probably mangled that name. But they called up and said, we're in New York City and we're coming to Baton Rouge, and where do we need to tie up? And they got directions. They came down. From what I understand, they craned them over and dropped them on the deck and then moved across the river to the port and tied up, and then had a huge crawfish boil for the guys just to welcome them and thank them. So 4 of our Oerlikons, the 2 at midships on the port side and the 2 on the fantail, come from the Royal Navy, courtesy of the Royal
What
Navy.
year would have this been?
I want to say it was around 86, but I'd have to look that up for you.
I want to
But
say
very
that the Kidd, it's we like to say that Kidd is in our World War II configuration, and the crew, starting with people like Tim Rizzuto and Ed Zukowski, have worked very hard over the years up to the current crew. We're constantly working to take her back to a certain date and time. Right now, it's August of 1945. I'd like to get back to April of 1945, but we'll see. It requires some more equipment. The Kidd was selected to come to Baton Rouge because in the mothball fleet in the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, Kidd was the one closest to her World War II configuration, but that doesn't mean she was in her World War II configuration. She didn't have these 20 millimeters. She didn't have torpedo tubes. What she did have was her pole mast that you can see in this picture here. A lot of the other Fletchers, and we're going to have a whole a podcast on that in September that Sullivan's going to lead us on, post-war modifications that changed the configuration of the Fletchers. And the ones they selected, and the ones they had to select from, a lot of them had been modernized, Fram modernization, etc. But Kidd, for some reason, and I've heard a rumor, it's because her name, because she was still associated with Admiral Kidd, who died aboard Arizona, had not received as much modernization as a lot of her sisters. And that's why she was selected to be returned to World War II. And when Kidd was brought to Baton Rouge in the early 80s, that's kind of like a golden age of ship salvage. The U.S. Navy was very, very easy to work with on their decommissioned ships. They would allow people to come in and take what they needed off these ships in order to restore selected museum ships, because not every ship in mothballs was selected to be a museum ship. A lot of them were selected for either sell to foreign navies or for scrapping. And during that time, people like Tim Rizzuto would go all over the place and come up with these amazing pieces of equipment. And I see somebody's bringing up a question about the Mexico scrapping, and I'll let Tim talk about that. That was a that was a new era, and that's where it became more and more difficult to get equipment off of these ships that were set up for be scrapping. And especially with the incident with the one in Mexico, there was some mishandling of the transfer that caused the authorities just to give up their hands and say, screw this. We're scrapping her.
So you're familiar with this story then?
Which story?
About this John Rogers in Mexico?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it. I've learned about it recently. I didn't always know this story. It's something that I've learned just recently talking to Tim, and that's why I want him to give details on it. So I'm going to ask. I told you what it was like during the golden age when people like Tim Rizzuto were making some major modifications to Kidd, and they would carry some of that over into Slater. But Tim can talk about the lesson that we learned from John Rogers, and basically that's heralded the new age where it's more difficult to scavenge off these different ships.
Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Well, I wasn't intricately involved in the John Rogers, but I did know one of the guys that was working to get her, I believe, up to Saginaw Bay, Michigan, was where they were aiming to bring her. Ultimately, where the Edson currently is. But John Rogers was the last the last round bridge Fletcher still in existence around 99. And 2000, 2001, Mexico, South Korea, and Taiwan were just beginning to purge the Fletchers out of their fleets. So John Rogers was the last one still around. She decommed in 2001. Her name at that point was Cuitlalak. And again, to our Spanish listeners, my apologies for mangling that name. But she was kind of held for a little while. This group out of Michigan wanted to preserve her, bring her back to the States. And they had a lot of stuff lined up to go ahead and bring her up. And apparently the tug company that was going to be doing the towing from Mexico up around the East Coast and through the lakes, they were based, I think, out of New Orleans. And Hurricane Katrina trashed them. And I don't think they put them out of business, but they hurt them bad enough to where things got delayed, and then one delay after another began happening. And as I understand it, the Mexican Navy pretty much got tired of the situation. It was going on 5-6 years, and very quietly they moved her away from where she had been. She was banging up the dock, just like the Cabot was down here in New Orleans for years, tearing up the dockside that she was tied to, and very quietly scrapped her. And we were paying attention to her quite a bit because, and I'm sure Shane was too, because there were no other Fletchers out there. They'd all been scrapped. And I was especially curious about her torpedo tubes, what became of the tubes, what became of the blast shield sitting on top of it, because that was the last major piece we needed for Kidd. And they didn't say a word until the job was already done and she was gone. And they just made an announcement: the Cuitlalak is gone. Rizzuto may have had some contacts in the Mexican Navy at some point, but for me, it was like a black hole. I would send messages in and I'd never get a response back. And it was just a real shame because, like I said, she was the last round bridge Fletcher. It would have been neat to see her preserved. But I don't know, in response to the question from Sean, and hello, Sean, I see you on our Facebook page quite a bit. In response to Sean's question, I don't know of anything that came back from Mexico off the John Rogers. That doesn't mean nothing did, but I'm not aware of it.
Yeah, I mean, we want to salvage these ships, but if they're just going to scrap them, then we at least like to take equipment off of them. From torpedo tubes to light switches, anything on these ships is gold for us because it's not made anymore. And if nowadays, if we can't find a replacement, we have to fabricate it. And sometimes, like these fighting lights that were reproduced on Slater by Barry Witt, even those couldn't have been made if the company that made the switches inside the control box weren't still being made and available. Eventually you get to a point where there's nobody left to make everything that you need to pull all this stuff together. And it's a piece lost to history. It's a piece of your ship that was there in World War II that no longer is there.
Well, I appreciate you answering that question, but you wanted this set up to talk about the namesakes of the different destroyers. So let's
rabbit holes.
Yeah, well, that's all right, and those are great rabbit holes. Stories about ice cream machines and ships getting scrapped. Under the cover of darkness in the middle of the night. I mean, those aren't stories that you're going to hear or you're going to find on Wikipedia. So I love stuff like that. At least that's some of the fascination that I have with this type of thing. So I appreciate you relaying that. When it comes to namesakes or nicknames, let's move on to the USS The Sullivans. Who wants to take it?
You want to take it,
Well,
Shane, or?
well, I mean, it's Stephen and I will both be able to talk about this, but of course, it's named after the five brothers from Waterloo, Iowa. We tell that story. It's it's a story that has taken a larger meaning than I think what FDR expected when he said we needed to name a ship after the five brothers, and they took the USS Putnam, which was ready to be launched, and they changed the nameplate and on the back on the transom from the USS or Putnam to the Sullivans, and they launched. She was ready to be launched. So to keep that story going, and to hit while the iron's hot, so to speak, I believe. But as I mentioned, it's taken a larger meaning, and it now has become a ship that represents all Gold Star mothers and Gold Star families. And that's what the Sullivans family themselves have, how they describe the ship. So it's not only representing the five brothers, but it's kind of like the Gold Star ship. And if you look at the Arleigh Burke today, the DDG 68, they have a shamrock on the funnel like we did, as you can see in that image on the forward funnel. But their battle flag is the 5 Gold Star battle flag. So as Parks was mentioning, when they come back into port, they probably fly a huge Jolly Roger. Our battle flag, when DDG comes back into port in Florida, is the 5 Gold Star flag that the Sullivans flew in their home after the boys were killed.
Stephen, was there anything you wanted to throw in there?
Yeah, I mean, piggybacking off what Shane said, the Sullivans family and what the ship represents. So Shane and I got to go to Waterloo last year, and it was pretty awesome just being there and seeing where the Sullivan family lived, where they grew up, where they went to school. Some of you have probably seen that on our YouTube page where we've, kind of toured the city, and the relationship that we still have with the family is I don't know, it's just really cool. And we went to the Grout Museum in Waterloo, Iowa, where they really celebrate the lives. We celebrate the ship and the crew, and the Grout Museum in Waterloo celebrates like the family and the lives of the Sullivans and what they did before they went off to the Navy. And we just got to see some really cool stuff and hear, like, we heard audio of the brothers talking and Genevieve singing, and I mean, that's what makes all of these ships, so special, is that these Fletcher-class destroyers are named after people who had lives and families, and they came from cities, and they're represented. So yeah, I mean, the Sullivans is one of those stories that's just, it's embedded in American history, and like so many things, like Saving Private Ryan, which is like super loosely based on it, but it just has its spot in history. The family and the ship. So we couldn't be more proud to represent it here in Buffalo.
So explain the nickname Flagship of the Irish Fleet.
That's just, again, I started 5 years ago. So you're saying Tim has a long history. Parks, you have a long history. My knowledge is only based, especially for the Sullivans, because the crew is not the 537 crew isn't as active at the naval park anymore as say the Little Rock crew. So there's very few crew from any time in her service from 43 to 65 that I have met personally to hear these stories. So my understanding comes from what I find in the collections, and I try to read as much. So I have just seen in the collections it being called the flagship of the Irish fleet for potentially obvious reasons, but I don't have those fun stories behind it. So I can only talk about what I hear in the collections. Now, we do have 6 hours of VHS tape that I've just recently given to Stephen, and he's going to digitize it, of oral history, 6 hours of oral histories of the crew. And that will be a treasure trove that hopefully we can get some of those stories, apocryphal or not, of her service in World War II and Korea and Cold War and beyond. So I just, where the Little Rock crew was, until 1976. So they're still sprightly and young, at 70 and 72 years of age, especially if they're on the ship as a part of the decommissioning crew or something. But, for the Sullivan guys, they're just potentially too old to even come and visit anymore. So I have met very few of them, maybe one or two of them, where we can meet Little Rock crew 1 or 2 a month. So I have developed many more stories from regarding Little Rock and her service.
And it seems like a lot more too with Little Rock. I've noticed, like, even just this year, quite a few have already either said they're coming to visit or they have already visited for Little Rock. So yeah, it definitely, like Shane says, I mean, Little Rock is definitely more prevalent with ex-crew members. One thing I did want to add, though, to kind of like the personality, so to speak, of the Sullivans is the ship itself. So the Sullivan boys were on the USS Juneau when it went down at the Battle of Guadalcanal, and when they found the ship, when they found the Juneau underwater, it was actually on St. Patrick's Day that they found it. So it's just one of those weird coincidences that kind of tie into, like, of course they found it on St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah. I'm going to speculate as an ex-Navy guy that they adopted the shamrock because it was a simple symbol symbolizing the Irish family of the Sullivans. And then from the shamrock, the rest played out in the bars and whatever ports they went into. That they really played and built off that Irish heritage and earned themselves the nickname Flagship of the Irish Fleet. That's just a guess on my part, how I see things play out in the Navy at times. So I'll be interested to see what your oral histories have to say about that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we plan on digitizing that and getting it into a medium that we could, in a media format that we can read and listen to and transcribe, more importantly than anything else. So, a lot of times people ask us how many shamrocks are actually on board the ship. So we kind of guess anywhere between 55 to 60. Shamrocks would just be painted randomly, like they're on the reduction gears, they're on, like tables on the mess deck. So, just various steam pipes and vents and things like that. So I think there was one on the power panel in the forward engine room. So I think those, as Parks, you were just saying, that kind of grew over time, right? They probably weren't sanctioned, as you had mentioned, to put the funnel on, to put the ship emblem on the funnel, but then it grew over time to have that in different spots, have the shamrock in different spots of the ship. Now, I think one thing that I have read is that, of course, Buffalo has a pretty large Irish population, and especially back in 1977, they were still going. We kind of consider all the Irish people in Buffalo like scoopers because they were scooping the grain out of the lake freighters and into the grain elevators. And so no doubt that our founding fathers said, oh my gosh, there's a story of people with an Irish heritage. And so that's why I'm sure the Sullivans was chosen to kind of connect with that Irish heritage that we had here in Buffalo.
But isn't that great, though? I mean, what you just described was a crew that bonded with their ship through an identity. However it grew up, however it matured, the Sullivans developed that identity, and subsequent crews would bond with that. The shamrocks around the ship are evidence of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great, because that's the kind of thing that makes for a happy ship.
And it led.
No, go ahead, Shane.
So I don't want to interrupt, but I was going to mention about Alita Sullivan, Steve. So I don't know if you were going to tell us.
No, yep, you're good.
Okay, so, and that stems right from Alita Sullivan. All right, Alita was a sponsor that is the envy of the Navy. right? Sometimes you'd have sponsors, they just smash the bottle and then potentially you never hear from them again. Alita told the crew to call her mom. So they would write letters to her and say, Mom Sullivan, and she would address letters back saying, to my boys on the ship, to my boys on your ship. And she really fostered this. She became a surrogate mother to many of the crew in World War II, Korea, and through the Cold War service. And she was very active. They would go to their home in Waterloo when they were on leave, when the ship was home ported in either the Atlantic, especially after the war. And so she really fostered this bond. And, so you're an 18, 19-year-old guy and you're saying, wow, I'm writing letters to the mother of the 5 Sullivan and she's calling me her son. And I think that's kind of that bond that you're addressing, Parks, and for all of you, it's kind of you're addressing that. But Stephen, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to, kind of go off something that Parks said. The crew really did run with it. I was able to last year when everything happened with the Sullivans, sinking in the Buffalo River. We had somebody that served on board the Sullivans, and he came to see the ship, and I got a chance to interview him for our oral history project. And he said he's like, I think he served on 3 different ships, and he's like, there was nothing like serving on the Sullivans. He's like, it was just automatic that there was this like brotherhood, this camaraderie, that everybody was so close. And he said that he actually got to visit the DDG 68, which is the new USS, the one that's in active service right now. And he said it was the same exact way, like when he talked to people. So there really is something about that ship that just the crew really bonds, not over necessarily like the Irish part of it, but the brotherhood and what the brothers stood for, and just being so much closer than he said. He's like, I didn't feel this close with the crew and any of my other vessels the way I felt on the Sullivans.
And we have there it is. There's Andrew Biondo. He's joined us. He's the caretaker of the Sullivans, and he does a lot of work on board. And it's a little different having 3 vessels, at 3 tourable vessels as part of your attraction, as opposed to having 1 vessel. So when we talk about equipment and things, like I'm trying to think of, what do we need on the Sullivans? What do we need on the Little Rock? What do we need for the Croaker? So it's just kind of triples the work and the research into it. But yeah, Andrew's here. Hello, Andrew. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Parks, should we move on to another Fletcher?
Yeah.
You want to talk? What do you want to talk?
Yeah,
about?
where's Buzz?
Let's talk about this.
Buzz was in the comments a moment ago.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This is a big mystery. The rooster.
We had Buzz from the Cassin Young on. Was that last month, guys, or the month before?
No, I think it was last month. The last one,
another
March.
great guest to have on, but I don't know if we actually covered how the rooster came about.
Well, that's because we've been having discussions about this. Nobody really seems to know. She showed up. This rooster emblem showed up on. And do you have the picture that I sent you, Ken, today? That is from Buzz. It's the one picture of the rooster in her stack. And by looking at the he's here. He wasn't invited. Poor Buzz.
Okay.
We love you, Buzz.
Ken.
He should be
Ken, how
talking
could
about
you
his
do
shit.
this? How can you do this, Ken?
Hold on a second.
Oh.
I thought I sent him an email. If he says he wasn't invited, then he did not get my email. Which
we wanted you on.
Well, send it again. Send it again.
See if we can get him on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Hold on. Let me, actually, you know what? That's if he's up. To, bear with me a second. Let me see if I can get this to happen.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, but I will second that, Parks. That is, when that photo was shared, I was really enthralled with that photograph.
Yeah.
There's just something about the actual historic, evidential history that you could read from a photograph. It's kind of second to none, and it was so good to see that on this emblem on the stack there on the Cassin Young. It was really good.
So all we know right now and Buzz will chime in when he gets here, but the rooster didn't appear in photos of Cassin Young before her first kamikaze strike in what was it, May of 1945, June of
No,
1945, April. Okay, April of 1945, and then in her second kamikaze strike in July of 1945, we see the damage and we see the rooster on the stack at that time. So it seems to have been put on the stack after that first kamikaze hit. And so we've been having discussions. I looked up what the meaning of a rooster is. You see her claw. I mean, that what do you call that? That fighting talon or whatever.
Talons, yeah.
Yeah, and roosters. What? Spur. Yeah.
Spur.
So that is in other words, it's a fighting cock. And I think that, just guessing here, we don't have any evidence to prove it. I think the crew adopted this because the rooster symbolizes rejuvenation. It describes a creature that protects its flock, which Cassin Young was doing as a picket ship at the time. And it was a fierce animal and would fight anything. And I would guess, just purely guess, that's the meaning behind the rooster. But her actual, the actual reason behind this emblem's been lost to time. And we've been talking to Buzz about this. He's been looking for information. I'm sure he's going to still be looking, but this is a mystery, and I'd love to see this solved.
Well, I apologize, for most that don't know. I'm the one that sets up all the links, all the invites, gets everyone lined up to make sure that they can join us. And I must have blown it on my end, because it would have been great to have Buzz. I did just email him the link. Buzz, if you are prepared or you have the ability to join us, jump on, and we can talk about that. One question that I had for you, and Parks, you just kind of like briefly mentioned it. You talked about the simplicity of the shamrock for the Sullivans. Doesn't this kind of, you're talking about a really complicated emblem or logo or whatever kind of it, but the Jolly Roger or the skull and crossbones, that can be a little complex, but it can also be very simple depending on how you depict it. But this one's really complicated. That's got to be rare when it comes to putting it on a ship, especially a World War II ship.
Well, I took this, I mocked up a flag because we're doing this flag flying aboard the various ships on the actual birthdays, and I mocked up a flag because nothing like this existed. This is from a woodcut sign that is displayed at the Cassin Young. I assume it was at some time. I took this off of a photograph and cleaned it up to use it. So the picture that we have from the second kamikaze hit showing the stack, it's a little washed out. You can't see the detail. You can only see enough detail to determine that the rooster is there. So I don't know how detailed the actual stack art was. Again, this is a woodcut that was done sometime later, I'm assuming, that they used to display the ship in Boston. So it's very detailed. I don't know how detailed the stack art was.
Yeah, and I remember that Buzz was mentioning that from this woodcut emblem that they have, I think as you board the ship, it's there like on a sign. It actually had like the Japanese sun and ray flag in its spur or talons, and they were told that they had to remove that from the National Park Service.
And we can't see that in the photo of the kamikaze damage. There's not enough. You don't show enough detail to be able to determine that.
Yeah,
but I can fully see that as happening. That sounds like something they would have done.
Real quick, Buzz, Warren, whatever name you want to go by, you say you got your email, no link to click. You used to have another email. Jump on if you can and let us know.
He says there's no link in his email, in your email.
Yeah, well, all you got to do is click on the picture in that I sent you. That actually is the link. but we would. Oh, look at this.
Oh.
What are we looking at?
Hey!
Somebody's coming in.
Nothing yet.
See the
I
ceiling.
don't know what that is.
Pick on my
Buzz,
ceiling.
I can't believe
It's
we're
a
doing
ceiling.
Here. Buzz, are you there?
Yeah, I hear him.
You
Don't
do?
see him.
I don't hear anything.
There we go.
I hear something. Tell us.
Hey.
There you go. Hey, man. Good to see you again.
Yeah, I'm here.
So, what do you know about the Cassin Young and the Rooster, or does nobody know anything about how this came about?
I got.
Uh-oh. Bad connection. All
All right, Buzz, you're done. Goodbye,
Damn
Buzz.
it was worth a try. Hey, I apologize to
All
Buzz
right.
for not getting that.
Getting okay.
Hold on a second. Well, maybe we do have you. Go ahead. Not working.
Yeah, okay.
And we lost him.
And we lost him. All right, it was worth a try.
But he looked good.
Yeah. Buzz always looks good. Let's see. All right, so then let's move on to this next one.
Well, I mean, that's the Greek ensign. The Charette didn't have a known identity, and she's been taken over by the Greeks, named now the Velos, which means arrow. And we're just going to fly the Greek flag on her birthday because we don't know of any stories surrounding that ship. That
John Epp, with the Slater coming from the Hellenic Navy, do you know any stories about the Velos at all?
And actually, look at it. Look at the camo scheme from the flag to behind his shoulder there, John's shoulder. It kind of looks like a Greek flag, doesn't it? Now that you see it like that.
Well, the Velos is important in Greek history because it was part of a mutiny in '73 with the whole junta and all that. So basically, they were taking part in a NATO exercise when the captain of the ship of the Velos learned that some naval officers had been essentially taken prisoner back in Greece. And he decided to sail the Velos to Italy and wait it out there. Not really defect, but they did seek asylum for himself, some officers, some petty officers. The crew of the Velos, the enlisted guys, they wanted to stay in Italy with the rest of the officers and their captain, but they were advised to stay on the ship for fear of retribution back home in Greece towards their families. And I believe they ended up going back to Greece. And then the following year in '74, I believe the junta fell, and then Velos returned to Greece. And now it's a museum ship.
Wow. Okay. That's a pretty amazing story. I don't know if I actually heard that before. So the Velos pulled out of a NATO operation and
More or less, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And go
well,
ahead.
I was going to say, as a museum ship, most recently, the past month and a half, 2 months, they sustained storm damage, and I believe they got a gash in their side, bashing against some rocks.
Yeah.
Connor mentioned something about that. That he had seen some kind of a news article about it, but couldn't find much in the way of details. So do you know if it's still being operated as a museum ship, or is it just tied up to a dock somewhere?
Oh no, it's a museum ship. Yeah, it's in Athens, I believe.
Actually,
As
I
of the
think she's in
status after
Thessaloniki.
the accident, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think she's in Thessaloniki at the moment.
Yes. Yep. You're correct.
Well, that's where she got damaged. I think they moved her to a different dock because that dock was destroyed. It's not usable right now. It's interesting. She, as a museum ship, she's not a museum ship representing the Fletchers per se. She is representing, she's called the Museum for the Anti-Dictatorial Struggle.
Yep.
And she's there to represent that time when that military junta had been rejected and thrown out. And as such, she's been a political football over the years. And that's why she's been put out onto a dock in open water in Thessalonica. I'm sorry if I mangled that name. And from more covered docks. So it depends on the political winds in Greece on how well that ship's being treated.
Yeah, I wonder, is that with Papandreou? I don't know. I'm gonna have to do a little more research into that. Like, there was a military coup, I think. Yeah, and I wonder if it was with Papandreou. Although I don't know much more. I know he was maybe the president or the leader. Oh, that's so interesting.
It looks like
Buzz TV buzzing?
I don't know, but we got him on. So let's see what kind of connection we got with Buzz now. What can you tell us about the Castle Young's namesake? Or not the namesake, but the symbol. And all right.
So, like the rooster, Buzz might be a myth.
There is no Buzz. All right. Moving on. Well, the whole thing about the Velos, it would be nice if there was, some type of a connection or a representative that we could bring on for something like this. But absent of that, we're going to drag John Epp when the time comes. We're going to drag him in to give us a little bit more history on the Velos at that point. Now, Parks, you sent me an interesting question or issue to raise, which was the last one. So apparently there was a Fletcher-class destroyer called the USS Black that had the hull number 666.
Yeah. I'm going to direct your question to Tim. He'll regale you with tales about the USS Black.
All right, Mr. Nesmith. I'm not familiar with the USS Black, but the whole point of this episode that we're doing tonight talks about namesakes, ship reputations, histories, that type of thing. So what can you tell us about the USS Black? I wish I had a picture. Maybe while you're giving us a little bit of a history, maybe I can find a picture of the USS Black with the hull number 666.
Nice.
Okay. Well, as far as tales of her, I don't have tons of tales of her, but she was a squadron mate of the Kidds in Desron 48 in World War II. Fletcher-class, just like all of us. And her hull number being 666 kind of resulted in a little bit of a personality for herself. The crew really embraced the iconography that would be associated with it of bad luck, ill fortune, something like that. I don't know that it was ever any stack art. I've never found stack art on it, but one of their patches, one of their emblems was an 8-ball. And anything really related, a devil, this, that, they really kind of went with and ran with. She was with us when we took the kamikaze hit. In fact, the kamikaze that came at us and hit us ultimately made kind of a run at Black, leapfrogged her, and then hit us. And the theory, and it's only ever going to be a theory because the pilot, of course, died in the attack, but the theory was that he was trying to get two ships for the price of one plane, drop a bomb on Black, and then taken kamikaze Kidd, and the bomb may have hung up. Maybe that's why it was still on board when he hit Kidd. But again, that's just a theory that some of the crew members on both ships have put out over time. But yeah, her crew really embraced that 666 hard. They had all sorts of patches on it.
Dark humor. They engaged in dark humor a lot.
Yes.
Is that a tripod mast in that photograph? So that's like a post-war. That's definitely
post-war. That huge 666 on the bow. Boy, that's about as big as you can get.
Yeah.
The alternate theory on the on the whole kamikaze hit was that the pilot, who was an engineering student, very intelligent, he may have sized up the situation very quickly and realized that if he came in to Kidd from Black, and of course he didn't know what ship was which, he just saw these picket ships, but I'll just use their names because we know who they are. If he came in to Kidd from Black, that Kidd could not use her 5-inch guns, one of her most effective anti-aircraft guns, to shoot him down, because the Kidd would effectively be firing on the Black and causing damage there. Whether he planned that or not will never be known, but that's in fact what happened. Kidd could not use her 5-inch guns on the kamikaze incoming on her path because the Black was in the line of fire, and she could only use her 40s and 20s. She hit the kamikaze aircraft several times, but it didn't stop her from hitting Kidd. So whether he knew this or not, or like Tim said, if his bomb hung up on the aircraft or not, we'll never know for sure. But these are a couple of the possibilities.
One last Fletcher I want to bring. Oh, go ahead, Shane. Well,
I was gonna expand it out too. So if you want to focus on one particular Fletcher, go ahead, and then I was going to talk about something where it expands out a little bit. The namesake stuff. So.
Go ahead.
No. Are you sure? Okay.
Yeah.
So, there was just on the Smithsonian Channel, they do a series called Combat Ships, and they just did one on the heroes of Guadalcanal, and it premiered last Sunday. The reason why I know this, because I don't just subscribe to the channel, is because I was on it for one hot minute out of a 45-minute show. Even though they interviewed me for like 2 hours, I made it on.
Cheap plug.
Cheap plug. Okay.
And I was in the episode before.
Oh, in episode 3? Very nice. So, but what they do is they talked about that there were 7 ships and 6 destroyers named after people who perished during that night battle of Guadalcanal. And I like the way that was a really nice index that they used. And they thought about it in a different way of talking about namesakes. And they said, well, 7 ships, and out of those 6 were destroyers that were specifically named in this battle. And I think that would be a nice research project for us or someone, or, if we ever have the time to do it, is to kind of identify what battles all of the namesakes of, say, it doesn't have to be all the destroyers ever, but, certain classes. It would be cool to see, and then see patterns of where those people were lost, or where they performed meritoriously. And what I did not know was that the ship named after the first ship named after an African American was someone who died at the Battle of Guadalcanal, the USS Herman, which I did not know. So I have a little list in front of me,
and he was a mess attendant. He was a mess.
Yes, he was. The USS Cass and Young, the USS Douglas A. Monroe, the Sullivans, and the USS Mustin. So I found that really interesting. And again, it would kind of be an interesting research project to create an index, and then to see patterns of groups of ships named after certain battles or something. So
well, it is interesting because Fletchers were the most prolific class of destroyers with 175 units built. So they had to reach into various periods of history, from some of the earliest American naval battles to men who died literally months before to name these ships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. So that's all I wanted to mention, Ken. Cheap plug.
Can we go 3rd time's the charm and see if we can try Buzz one last time?
You got to tell him to turn his TV off, though.
I don't know.
All I hear is his TV.
It might be an echo too. So let's give it a shot. Okay. So here's what we're gonna do.
Yep, here he comes.
Warren Buzz Smith, I think. We're gonna try and unmute his mic, or maybe he's got to do it on his end. See, we lost him again. All right. We're giving up.
Well, this happened when we had him on, right? Like there must be something with his connection.
It was a weaker signal. Okay, so last Fletcher class destroyer that I want to bring up, which is something that Parks also had emailed me about, involved the, where is it?
USS Johnston.
Yep, and I'm gonna, it might be helpful if I actually added it to the stream. There we go. And you had said,
Do we have a picture of her in service or just?
yeah, let me see if I can find one. But you had said, why did or raised the question, why did the USS Johnston have the nickname GQ Johnny, which I wasn't aware of. So
yeah, sometimes the nickname goes with the personality of the ship, like we've been talking about, the Pirate of the Pacific for the Kidd, the flagship of the Irish fleet for the Sullivans, which I love, by the way. Commander Evans, who commissioned Johnston, was a no-nonsense warrior. He had been, as a junior officer, he had been humiliated in the opening battles for America in the Pacific War. He was caught down in the South China Sea during the attack on Pearl Harbor and saw the Allied fleets down there totally whipped by the Japanese, and his ship had to run from battle. And he resolved that if he ever got command of his own ship, he would never run from an enemy. And he made that very clear in his commissioning speech to the crew before they took it over, basically saying, if you are not willing to give your all to this ship, you might as well get off right now. And he's not the kind of guy who would have gone in for this kind of morale building exercise of emulating pirates or the Irish or Roosters or anything. He was very straightforward, by the book kind of captain, and he drilled his crew incessantly. So this is where the nickname GQ Johnny came from. It was created by the crew to basically describe the way that Evans drove his crew. Now, it may not be as fanciful, colorful as, say, the Pirate of the Pacific, but the crew, as onerous as it was, as tiring as it could be, they still took pride in it. And they knew through the drills and through certain battles that Johnston fought through before the Battle of Samar, her final battle, that they could basically kick ass anywhere on the ocean. And it was that attitude that crew had, that single crew had behind their captain when the Japanese shells started dropping amongst their formation, and why they were the first to turn into battle. So it's not as colorful as the others. You're not going to see any stack art on Johnston, but and the nickname at first was kind of given as a bit of a frustration on the part of the crew, but the crew did coalesce around it. And as anybody knows, anybody that lives through a difficult time aboard ship, that's going to be where they derive the most pride. When you talk to Fletcher sailors who come out to the Kidd, they all talk about how horrible it was aboard, how cramped it is, how hot it was, how, just all the complaints are endless. But nowadays, having lived through that and having served aboard these ships, they take great pride in those discomforts, in the challenges they had to face aboard. And it's where you get this pride now, being a tin can sailor. It was difficult work, and they hated doing it at the time, but it's where they derive their pride today.
And you're basically saying that nickname GQ Johnny came from their captain, who's pictured here.
No, it came from the crew. The crew came up with GQ Johnny. Evans would never approve of anything like that.
Okay.
Maybe he knew about this, and maybe he took a little bit of silent pride in it. But that nickname was invented by the crew, again, out of frustration at first,
Got
then
it.
I think they coalesced around it.
Okay, I understand.
For
now.
general quarters, which is
Yeah,
meaning
that's
full
right.
battle station.
I'm sorry. I make that assumption. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. GQ stands for general quarters,
Okay.
which you're always jumping to. The general quarters alarm rings. You're running to your battle station. And
I just thought it was because he
Johnston
was really handsome.
I'm sorry. I assume some things sometimes, but yeah, that's what it's Johnny, of course, for the Johnston, but Johnston always seemed to be going to general quarters drills all the time, or for real.
Got it.
So,
and I mean, one of the things that really can, I can't speak it too much, but like there is that quote, like this will be, that Captain Evans said, this will be a fighting ship and we will be going into danger. Yeah. I mean, just to announce that on maybe her commissioning day.
Yeah, it was on her commissioning day.
I mean, is just, we will be going into danger. It's just something that just, your heart sinks or your heart swells depending, but it really is a phrase that can really bind the crew greatly to say, we're all in this together, and I don't know.
Yeah,
it's just
Evans set the tone at the commissioning, and he held that line the year that Johnston was alive. So,
and he was last seen on the Fantail, right? Giving orders.
Basically, yes. It's assumed that he abandoned ship and was never seen again.
He had been injured, though, right? He was hit with shrapnel or
first salvo.
Splinters.
First salvo. Johnston was smacked by battleship Yamato. If you can think of a Fletcher-class destroyer going against the largest battleship in the world, absorbing 3 18-inch shell hits and from her primary batteries, and also in seconds later, 3 6.1-inch shell hits from her Yamato's secondary batteries. And it was one of those secondary hits that hit near Evans and a group of officers standing on the port bridge wing, killing or mortally wounding everyone around Evans. It tore 2 fingers off his left hand. It blew his uniform off, peppered his upper body with shrapnel, and he fought the rest of the battle the next couple hours in that condition. And at the end, he was directing the ship from the fantail. Anybody who's been aboard these Fletchers has seen that little scuttle that leads down to the aft steering room. He stood there shouting down orders, steering orders, to the crew down in the aft steering room who were manually moving the rudder. Meanwhile, Mount 55, the aftmost 5-inch gun, was firing. The Mount captain could see that with each gun blast, he was scorching the back of his commander. But Evans yelled at him to keep firing and just took the scorching on his back every time that Mount fired. So Evans was a focused, determined warrior to the end.
Were there any other Fletchers that you wanted to touch on today? I think we went through the ones that you had emailed to me.
We could, like I said, there's 175 Fletchers. We can't
be here all night.
I mean, I think one of the things, and we would all agree, and I'm not trying to wrap up the conversation, but all the names were from people that performed above and beyond meritorious. A lot of them posthumously named. Some of them named even while they were still alive, just for meritorious action during combat. But these individuals had namesakes for a reason, and I think that's one of the major things that I would like to get across to people, is that these were human beings that stepped up in horrendous times, and they were recognized for that action, that meritorious action.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think with that, which is a good way to leave it, we're gonna close this out. Unless, was there anything else that anyone wanted to add? No? All right. Go
I
ahead,
saw
John.
somebody asked a question earlier. Any updates with former Atherton in the Philippines and the patrol craft? That
Oh,
sank
the
last year?
petrol.
My understanding is the Philippine Navy had announced back in October, after they had capsized basically at the moorings, that they've been stripped and they're going to be scrapped. Yeah. So
I
for all
didn't
we
know
know, they
about
could have
the.
already been scrapped by now. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't see that question.
I mean, I heard that the RV Petrol did capsize. Is that true? Does Parks,
Well,
would you know
Petrol,
that?
unfortunately, the research ship Petrol, which now belongs to the U.S. Navy, was undergoing refitting in her dock in Scotland, and I think they're still trying to determine the exact cause, but some of her supports collapsed and she rolled over onto her starboard side. Very disheartened to hear this. Petrol was, a research ship that was similar to research ships I've been on, and I know the crew, the Vulcan crew, that found so many wrecks out there that made their home aboard the Petrol. And it was a shame to see this happen to that ship. But that's also a warning sign for us. We're trying this year to raise money through the state of Louisiana legislature and private donations to get Kidd into dry dock. She hasn't had an overhaul since 1962, which is pretty amazing for a steel-hulled ship like this to go that long without an overhaul. There are dangers in dry dock. It's not a safe zone, and you have to be on your toes at all times. Which Tim and I just recently went to see the USS Texas, and we were climbing underneath the ship. Oh, look, there's a big battleship above us. And then at one point we realized that the ship was actually moving in the dry dock, and that did not seem too smart to be under her anymore. We've got to be careful going into dry dock, and we don't want to end up like Petrol did.
This was an interesting question. Before we wrap this up, there's probably a stack of questions that are in the chat. Maybe Connor, if you wanted to throw some up there too, that we may have missed. But I saw this one from Sean. Are any of you guys aware of any ships overseas that have the potential to be museum ships, or becoming available to be museum ships?
I'm curious to get you guys' opinion on this. Do you think we are at a tipping point with museum ships in the U.S. being so saturated?
It's a possibility.
It is, and yeah,
we're already seeing it. What, last year alone, there were quite a few that had to be scrapped.
Like I said, we're at a point in time where the U.S. Navy is not as eager to help the museum ships as she has in the past because of liability issues. We're also at that point, and this is what all of us as museum ships are struggling with now. How do we maintain relevance as we move into the 21st century? Where do we get our support as the veterans start to fade away? These are challenges that we're all faced with. And I'm sure that at the same time, as part of that, the question is asked, do we want to add more museum ships when so many museum ships currently in existence are struggling to define their future and all like that? So it's really incumbent upon all of us. And this is one of the reasons why we're drawing together as a group to help each other to maintain our relevance and to work with each other and find out how we can continue drawing support outside of our traditional means of support. So, I mean, it's great. I mean, people say, are there foreign ships, that are struggling financially? Can we bring them here? There's not a pot of gold here. We're all struggling financially as well. Can we pull one from a foreign navy and help them? I don't know.
Yeah.
And
I'd say like the logistics of that, like the question is, if they're struggling, say in Italy or something, what organization is going to tow it across the Atlantic? It's not going to be the U.S. Navy. So is there a nonprofit set up or an organization set up to then actually logistically bring it here and dock it here and then do all of the work on it? I just don't see that ever happening, because the U.S. Navy is not going to do it for a municipality, right? Like it's
right.
So the logistics of it.
New Orleans struggled to try and bring the USS Cabot there, a small escort carrier, and that fell through. The SS United States is sitting at a dock, as she has been for many years now, in Philadelphia, trying to get enough support for some kind of restoration on her. And even, so it's difficult. And I'm of the opinion, and maybe this is kind of selfish, but I'm of the opinion that we've got to put our energies into preserving the ships that we already have and keeping them with us. And instead of bringing more into the mix. I don't know. Just because I'm struggling trying to find funds just to get maintenance work done on our ship.
It's it's a tough question. I hate to see any ship scrapped, especially one that has the potential to fascinate me with whatever the history is. But you make a good point with the ships that are already on display, and just using the Kidd or the Sullivans as examples. Both need desperately to get into dry dock. Preserve the ones that we have, or focus on the ones that we have before you bring more to the mix. I don't know, John. It's a good question. I'm glad you asked it.
I mean, it's a tough one. We don't have a hard and set answer here.
Yeah. There was another question. Where the heck was that? Oh yeah. Little off subject, but I wanted to bring it up. I haven't heard anything, but Phantom HD, any more information about the Houston or the Perth about the illegal scrapping? I haven't heard anything, but with everyone here, I figured I'd throw it up there anyway. No news.
I can tell you another thing that I learned at Johnston that, again, changed my worldview on things. The future's in the deep. Resources, especially for green technology, is reaching pretty saturation point here on terrestrial sources. China has a lock on about 90% of the terrestrial sources for these rare earth minerals and metals that we need for our green technology. But there's a lot of it on the bottom of the ocean that yet to be mined. Another thing that we learned about from Johnston, and this is where she continues to educate us. When we went down there, there's nothing down there. It's 6,500 meters, almost twice as deep as Titanic. There's nothing down there. There's no oxygen. Where Johnston had not burned during the battle, her paint was still intact. Corrosion had not set in. And even those areas that had burned that showed corrosion, it hadn't advanced very far. But what really struck me was the scars that the wreck made when she impacted on the bottom were just as fresh as though they were made yesterday. There was no sediment buildup on the pieces. We actually had a Hadel scientist aboard our expedition, and he paid very close attention to this and ended up writing an analysis paper from the University of Wellington in New Zealand, which basically concluded that in the deep ocean, it does not heal itself in a measurable timeline, maybe over hundreds and hundreds of years. But if we are poised, and as China is right now, they have staked mining claims throughout the abyssal zones that the International Seabed Authority will allow. They're about ready to tear up the bottom of the ocean to pull in these rare earth minerals, these polymetallic nodules that are on the ocean floor down there in the abyssal plains. If you look west of Chile, there's a huge abyssal plain there, and China has staked out almost 100% of the mining claims on that abyssal plain. We do this large-scale mining of the ocean bottom. You can forget CO2 emissions. You'll screw up the ocean, and it won't heal itself. And if you screw up the ocean, you screw up the atmosphere. So these are lessons that we're learning from if in my case from Johnston, and this illegal scrapping is just another area of contention where that's going to affect this geopolitical competition that America and China and Russia and Japan, who are all trying to develop full ocean capability right now, so that they can go down there. Right now, the Chinese government operates a full ocean depth. The Chinese government operates a full ocean depth system, and they're going down deeper than anyone else can even see, can even find them, and the competition is moving down. This illegal scrapping is just the tip of the iceberg, so to speak, and there's more at stake down there about this. So this is a concern. I don't know how seriously this is taken in our government. I know that I'm concerned about it, but who the heck am I? But anyway, just food for thought.
Yeah. Well, all right. Park Stevenson, Tim Nesmith here from the USS Kidd Veterans Museum. What do you guys have coming up in the next month or so?
Ken wants to go to bed.
Well,
can I jump in with a question real quick for Parks?
okay.
There's like a truce or like a treaty or law, international law, where like if one of our ships are found in, say, Japanese waters, they would have to like notify us, right?
Okay, so officially, it's an international. There's law, and then there's law. There are laws that are determined by treaties. We'll take Titanic as an example. There is an international treaty that protects the Titanic wreck, but only those signatories to that treaty are bound by it. You cannot go there. We in 2000, the year that we found Samuel B. Roberts, our original goal for the expedition was to go after the Midway carriers, Kagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, and we were stymied by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, who denied our diving permit, and that only applied to U.S. citizens. We had other international members of the crew. We almost let the expedition go on with them in charge and leave the Americans behind. But we eventually decided not to do that. We pivoted and went to Samar instead and found Sammy B. Roberts. So I guess it was meant to be. But there is an unspoken law. I won't say unspoken, undocumented law. And it is codified in certain treaties, but not across all the nations on Earth. But it is assumed to be respected by all nations on Earth that a war wreck is the property of the government that sent that vessel off to war, and as such, it is the property of that government and should be respected as such. And what we're finding now is the Chinese don't respect that. They're going down after these these American and Australian wrecks and taking off of them valuable materials that they'll profit off of. And at the same time, they'll insist that they adhere to the general maritime law to respect war wrecks, but in practice, they'll do what they want when they want to. And of course, they certainly didn't respect when, well, let me back up. I don't want to get myself in political trouble here. But when an F-35 went into the water off the Philippine Sea last year, there was a race by the United States and China to recover that aircraft, and on the United States side to protect its secrets, from the Chinese side to exploit those secrets. And the United States won that race. But I guarantee you, the Chinese would have claimed that they respected the law, because they would have recovered that aircraft, as they've done in the past with like a P-3 Orion that they forced to land in their country. They returned the aircraft in pieces after they had examined it fully. So again, there's law and there's law, and it's up to the government ships who decide how they want to observe that law. And a lot of times it's through convenience. So are the Chinese wrong in exploiting these war wrecks? Most of the nations on Earth would say yes. But who's going to stop them? And again, this is where we know the Chinese are developing deep ocean technology. What are we going to do to counter that? So I go back to that same thing again. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you.
Any other questions that you want to cover before we wrap it up?
I want to say I really like Ray's comments tonight. His name is not familiar with our other Museum Ship Mafia shows, but he's really been active tonight, and we appreciate.
Said he knows a very young Park Stevenson.
Yes, Ray Trigstad and I were both at the Naval Academy at the same time. He was an upperclassman. Did he beat you up? He's more senior than me. We were both artists on our on the Academy's humor magazine, the Log magazine. And Ray's a very talented artist, more natural than me. I have to work to make my artwork, but Ray could really sketch things out. And there he goes. Oh yes, and I was in his wedding too. So Ray's here because of me, and I'm glad to see him here. It's been a long time, and I haven't seen him for quite a long time.
Yeah, well, you look through some of the comments, and you're right. I don't know if John, you mentioned this, but we've had a lot of new people here tonight, Ray being one of them. And
I do want to give a shout out to Aaron from USS Salem is here, and we met him at Hinza, Shane and I. And, so he's on watching right now.
Okay, I did not see that.
Hey, Aaron.
But as we said in the beginning of the broadcast, and I'll wrap it up also by saying the same thing. It's like we can't do a video podcast like Museum Ship Mafia without viewers and subscribers. So I'm thrilled to see as much discussion as we've had tonight in the comments. It's been fantastic. Sean is another one he hit us. Skipper N10 was there's a lot of great questions that have been popping up. So I definitely appreciate it and appreciate the viewership. So thanks.
And there's Lego Sam.
Oh yeah,
yeah, from the Ground Museum.
So Sean asked a question about partnering with these gamers.
I saw that. Hold on a second.
And
you're talking about this guy here.
Yeah, and that I think is the future of our support for these museum ships. As the veterans, as they get older and older and older, like Tin Can Sailors Association almost dropped the name Tin Can Sailors this year, but by a kind of a last minute vote, they decided to keep it. And the reason why they were going to drop it is because destroyermen nowadays are no longer have that association with the tin can. Destroyers today are not the tin cans of yesteryear. They're bigger, they're more capable. They're just not called tin cans anymore. So as these ships get older, the human support for them starts to fade away. But I see gamers we talked about maintaining relevance in the 21st century. How do you maintain relevance for a World War II warship in the 21st century? Well, you need passion. That's all of us that work on these ships. None of us are getting rich doing this. I'm scraping by. I took a 50% pay cut to take this job. We keep these ships here from our passion, and our support needs to be as passionate as we are. And that's what I'm seeing in the gamers nowadays. World of Warships. I'll go ahead and say it now. Here we go. Here we go. I'm working a collaboration with a Japanese company called Kankali, and we'll be announcing details of that soon. But they represent 8 million subscribers. There's no way I could ignore a block of people passionate about these ships as somebody like that. So, yeah, we are we are going after these games. Shane talked about doing a video for World of Warships. World of Warships has come to Kidd. They include her in the game. Heck, one of the wives of one of the players who came to visit the Kidd, Tim, got in a conversation with her, found out she was adept on an industrial sewing machine, and now she's sewing the straps for our life raft restorations. It's, you know, this is where the passion is nowadays.
Yeah, they've been to the Slater years ago. They did a video for us, but in terms of getting in the game, I don't think they're going to go anything smaller than a Fletcher. So Destroyer Esquire, I don't see ever coming into the game.
Not even the Sammy B. What the hell?
To tack on to that, to underscore that and wrap back around to what we were talking about earlier, in 2018 at the HINSA conference, Ryan Szymanski at the New Jersey and I, sitting in the back of the bus on the way to the Keyport Naval Undersea Museum for an outing, got to talking, and he brought up an interesting point. And the more we explored it, the more concrete really it seems to be. Modern day museum ships, like all of our ships, are a creation really of World War II generation. You had Olympia around, you had Texas starting in 1948, you had Constitution, Victory over in England and everything. But really, all the modern museum ships that have come along in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s, they came about because the World War II generation had that interest, they had that passion, they had the money. And now that generation is gone, now we see the after effects of what will survive out of what they built. And so, like Parks was saying, you've got to have passion. And right now, people that play World of Warships and other games like that, they're the ones that are really going to have to pick up the baton that the World War II generation has handed off for somebody to pick up.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I know that the gaming community is probably much larger than the community that's going to purchase and read a book published by a Shane Stevenson or a Parks Stevenson or a Stephen Tedesco. I mean, people read.
They better be reading Last Stand of Tin Can Sailors before they read a book by Shane.
Yeah, well, but my point is this.
Wow. Shots fired.
Yeah. All right. John's getting tired.
3 guns, no waiting, baby. 3 guns, no waiting.
This is what happens when you let a DE into the conversation. Okay.
But I guess my point is, even with movies, and Greyhound, of course, was a great movie, and I'm sure that the USS Kidd was compensated for the time that, you know, shots were filmed, or scenes were filmed on the destroyer. But you can't reach anywhere near a large enough audience as you do with the gaming community. And I'm not a gamer in any way, shape, or form, but, you know, when you have historians like Marty Morgan, and I talked to Parks about this over the phone, you know, Marty Morgan, who's a historian from Normandy, being an advisor for Sledgehammer Games for the Call of Duty platform. I mean, that's where the future's got to be. Now, how do you tap into that? I haven't the slightest idea, but I definitely, a museum ship can't wait around for a film studio to come calling and say, hey, can we film a commercial or a movie on board? That's not sustainable. But engaging a platform like World of Warships, I think, or like what Parks had just mentioned with the is it Kankali?
Kantai Collection, or short of Kankali.
That's where the future is. At least that's my 2 cents worth. Anything else you guys wanted to cover?
No, I don't. I just thank everyone for joining us. As you guys said, it's extremely active.
Yeah,
we still have more podcasts to do in this anniversary year.
Well, we've got others coming up in the future. So anyone that is still watching, we've got 46 viewers still on with us. There's going to be other, not launching, but commissioning anniversaries that we're going to be covering. And is the next one going to be coinciding with the Sullivans?
Velos.
The Charette. Or the Velos.
The Velos. So John Epp, get ready for that.
And that topic is, you know, the unique uses of U.S. destroyers in foreign navies.
That's right.
Yeah,
So
not
that'll-
just the Greeks, but the Mexicans, Japanese, Chinese, all the nations that Fletcher's went to
Taiwan.
and served in.
Yeah, Taiwan. Good one, Shane. Yeah. So Park Stevenson, Tim Nesmith with the USS Kidd. What do you guys have coming up with the next month? In the next month, when it comes to the museum.
We're going to be reworking a kamikaze exhibit, bringing it more up to date to talk about Lieutenant Yaguchi, who is the one that hit the Kidd. Work him into the exhibit and just refresh it, make it a little more user friendly to a 21st century audience. And you know, a good museum exhibit has a lifespan of maybe about 5 years, and this one's over 20 years old, so it's time to update.
Yeah, and one thing that I think that our museum doesn't address, and we get a lot of questions from visitors that come aboard, is what was life like aboard a destroyer, a Fletcher-class destroyer? It's not enough, I don't think, for people to come and look at the ship and look at the guns and the weapons and everything. Can we relate the experience that these destroyer men went through to the general public? So we're going to have the next major exhibit that we'll be developing be a walkthrough exhibit that tells the story of what it was like to live aboard a destroyer. But other than that, legislature's in session, and I have to concentrate on trying to get the legislature to approve money for hopefully a dry dock period next year. And B, there's a property just south of us that I'm trying to get as a workshop, because one thing I learned from our visit from USS Texas, probably the most important lesson I learned, is that our ongoing conservation efforts that will happen long after we've been to dry dock and got the hull repaired, we need to be able to take off equipment off the ship, take it to a workshop, get a targeted sponsorship for the restoration of that particular thing, like say a quad 40 millimeter mount, and get it torn down, rebuilt, and then put back on the ship. So we need a warehouse, we need a workshop space for that. So those are the major things we've got coming up this year.
Remind me, are you guys guided or self-guided tours?
We are not staffed to do guided tours routinely. We will accept entities who will pay extra money to provide staff for a guided tour, like some of the river boats that come up and down the river and stop at Baton Rouge. But outside of that, it's walk on and you're self-guided. And that's got its own dangers, because on slow days, people can find themselves in a part of the ship and don't think anybody's around, and that's when some mischief happens. But it's part of the game. So yeah, I envy the fact that you do mostly guided tours there. I also envy the fact that you guys shut down for the winter and can get some work done. We're open year round, every day except Christmas and Thanksgiving.
Yeah, except we don't heat the entire ship either.
Well, that's up to the volunteers.
Let's see. For those of you that want to learn more about the USS Kidd Veterans Museum, check out the website usskidd.com, and you can also check out their YouTube channel, USS Kidd Veterans Museum. So when you're on YouTube, simply in the search bar, type in USS Kidd Veterans Museum, and it'll come right up. Did I get that right?
You did. No World of Warships gameplay videos if you do it that way. Otherwise, you're going to have gameplay videos all over the place.
Oh my gosh! For the longest time, if you YouTubed USS Slater, it always came up with the World of Warships video. It was
Always came up with what?
the World of Warships video that they filmed. On the
Oh, really?
Slater.
Oh yeah.
Because I had like I don't know 100,000 views or whatever.
Let's see. I want to say thanks to Connor Kilgore, who is the admin from the Museum Ship's Facebook group. Had Connor on recently, and he is a volunteer for the Alexander Henry Canadian Coast Guard icebreaker on display up in Thunder Bay, Ontario. Actually, no warning, but here you go. Yeah. Thanks, man. Thanks for handling all the behind the scenes stuff for us tonight. We had a lot going on, a lot of questions, a lot of comments that needed to be posted. So thanks to Connor for helping us out. And did you have any parting words? I did want to say for the Alexander Henry, is it still www.tmtb.ca?
Yes, it is. It's www.tmtb.ca. I can actually just put up the link in a second here. I can just write down on this because you've given me powers.
Great power comes great responsibilities.
You
All right.
you had powers. Okay, so there it is.
Yeah. tmtb.ca. But yeah, so and we will be opening up next month on probably the 23rd or 24th of May. So by our next show, I'll probably be also working over there. So that'll be interesting. But yeah, basically what I can say this evening is, and I'm sure we can all relate, whether you guys are a military ship like you guys or a more civilian focused vessel like myself, support your local museum ship. Whether it's your favorite museum, your local museum, just support, because we're all in the same boat. Some of us are more famous than others, and some of us don't get the same visitations others do. So it's very important that as a community, we talk with each other, we communicate, and to the best of our abilities, we cooperate. Like, I love the fact that all the Fletchers are talking to each other. It's something that we don't have for the 3 Coast Guard ships that are museums in Canada. There's not really much in the way of conversation between the 3 ships that I'm aware of. So it's just really something nice to see, and I hope to see it more as we move forward.
And what probably not many people know is that the way Connor got involved with his local museum ship is that he just went for a tour and asked about the volunteer program, and now here you are.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty impressive. It's a great story, and after that, you also became then administrator of a very, very large museum ships Facebook group. So for those of you that are watching, if you're not familiar with the Museum Ships Facebook group, it's got about 60,000 followers that are
Hold on a second.
posting.
We're seeing it's 67,000.
67,000. They're posting
67,000 and 10,000 keyboard experts.
Careful, Bart.
Yeah. But you're always going to have that. But yeah, if you want to learn more about museum ships, definitely check out that Facebook group. We're happy to have Connor helping us out tonight. Anything else you want to add, Connor, before I kick you off?
Well, just to add to the museum ships things, we also have a website. It's museumships.us. And so people can go there. We have 250 ships now as of, I think, today.
Yeah, there was a there was a New York fireboat that was added.
Fireboat, yeah.
50th. I saw that posting earlier, so that's pretty cool. So thanks to Connor. All right, man, we're kicking you back behind the scenes.
Have a great night, guys.
Right, Connor. Thank you.
And let's see. John Epp, curator, USS Slater in Albany, New York. To check out their YouTube channel, search for USS Slater, and the website, ussslater.org. John, what do you guys have coming up in the next month?
Well, real quick, I want to address another Sean question. He's been all over the place tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, this game, Destroyer or U-Boat Hunter, I believe it came out in the fall, either as like a beta or maybe a full-fledged game. Barry Whitty, who the Buffalo Park boys know, he was actually one of their main experts for developing the game. They reached out to him, and he was a consultant and did all that. And I hear he might be working on something else. Yeah.
Barry Whitty?
Yeah, Barry Whitty. Yeah.
Do you know Barry?
Consultant on the game.
Yeah, I just didn't know that he would. I just didn't know that he would be like a video game consultant. Right? So that's
as far as I know, he's not. But I guess the company reached out to some places asking for like an expert, and some people recommended him. So
Well, and you don't have to be a video game expert. What you have to be is an expert in the particular subject that they're covering for accuracy, right? So if, for example, I remember an interview with Marty Morgan just to show how accurate a game needs to be. They wanted to make sure that the kick from an M1 Garand was accurate or being portrayed accurately. And so that's where these experts come into play. And I think I find it fascinating and encouraging, I guess, is a good way to put it, that these video game platforms are trying to get or attain that level of accuracy so that this history, lives on. And again, like I said before, I don't know how to tap into that, but it definitely is impressive.
in terms of what's going on, just a normal day to day. We don't have anything major coming up for May. But for June, we got the DESA, the final reunion of DESA. And then the Hensa conference, which I'll just talk about every month until we get there.
Sure. Yeah. And when do you start your onboard, what do you call them? Sleeper boards, that type of thing?
Oh yeah, we started those. We've already had a few.
Okay.
Yeah, we had one Friday night actually.
Gotcha.
Not to the extent that the Buffalo Naval Park does.
I will trade
try to
you
tap out at 50
any
people.
day. I will trade you our encampments for your encampment.
Well,
Do you have
it's
the
tough.
overnights on all three ships, or at least two of them?
We do. So the USS Little Rock is the majority of it, and then but we do open up the Sullivans and the Croker to tour, and then we kind of shut everything down at 8 o'clock. They all got to be back on. But there's so much going on. The itinerary is just kind of jam packed that people don't really have time to do much.
So they just sleep aboard Little Rock.
They do, yeah. I mean, we do. The guy who runs it, he plays really well into like the military motif and life as a sailor on the ship, and he does like safety briefing and fire drills, and uses Navy lingo throughout the night, and he really gets the scouts and even the parents like really into it. So it's we had 207 last night, so that was kind of crazy.
Oh,
The week before we had 245.
That's the ship's complement for the Slater.
Yeah.
And you have one guy monitoring all of those?
Well, no, we have a staff. We have a staff of about 10
Okay.
people.
Okay.
But he kind of like him and I run the program together. But he is really the driving force behind it because he runs the show on the day of. I'm just there to do educational stuff.
Mm-hmm. I would think with all those people on board in the middle of the night, things would start to go missing. As a matter of fact, you guys just posted a video the other day, or was it? When did you post it about rebuilding the bridge, getting additional components? And I would be afraid with all those people on board in the middle of the night. I guess because I'm talking about myself, I would wake up at 2 a.m. and start roaming around.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
a lot of
you would.
Yeah. So I don't know. Anyway. So for the Buffalo,
we have security on board.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, we have actually Andrew Biondo helps us out with that.
Okay.
Which we're so thankful for. And then we have someone that works 9 to 9 and just roams the ship and makes sure everything's good. And I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, parents can't sleep on the ship and they get uncomfortable. They walk up, they're walking around the ship all night, and it's fine as long as they're not causing trouble. But for the most part, they're not
falling down a hatch or something. Yeah. One thing that I want to say to everybody about the Buffalo New York County Naval Military Park is that they do have a members only section, which is that still $5? Okay. Yeah. So that video that I mentioned isn't available to the public. If you want to see additional behind the scenes stuff, you got to join their members group, which I think is pretty interesting. So check out the Buffalo New York County Naval and Military Parks members only section. And of
Oh,
course,
the Pilot House video. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
What would you think I was talking about?
Well, I don't know. You said, the bridge video. And I'm like, what is he talking about? And then once you said it again, I said, oh, yeah, that's the Pilot House video. Sorry. Thank you, Ken. Thank you for your support for that.
The video we're releasing tonight is available to everybody, though. That is not a members only, I believe, right, Shane? That's a open
Oh,
to
yeah. I
everyone
made
video.
it to, geez, it's premiering in about
12
13
minutes.
minutes or 12
Yeah.
minutes. So, yeah.
Yeah. So check. And what's that about, real quick?
We just kind of go over. We did an anniversary for the launch of the Sullivans on April 4th, and as Shane said before, we had the great granddaughter of Alita kind of reenact the commissioning. So it was kind of cool stuff.
So to check out that video, which starts in about 12 minutes or 11 minutes, check out, get on YouTube in the search bar, search for Buffalo Naval Park. It comes right up. Can't miss it. Check out the video that's coming up in a little over 10 minutes from now. And of course, the website, if you want to throw some support behind the Buffalo Naval Park, check out their website, buffalonavalpark.org. How'd I do there? Anything else?
You're great.
No, I want to thank Tim and Parks and the kid that just listening to the stories, because a lot of people listen to Museum Ship Mafia for the stories. So when we get to listen to the stories, it's it's great. And the ice cream machine story and all the stuff that you do, Parks, it's just great to sit and listen.
Yeah, definitely glad to have Parks and Tim on here tonight.
Thank you, but I thought I was part of the Museum Ship Mafia. What happened?
You are part of the Museum Ship Mafia.
You are, yes, you are. But your stories are way cooler than ours. So,
So does that mean I'm part of the family now?
yeah.
And you're never
You're allowed
out.
at the
You're never
table.
getting out, Tim.
You're allowed at the table now.
Matzo balls. Yeah. Okay.
You get to sit at the big kids' table. Yeah. Okay. Good.
And
I don't want to be
real
a
quick.
big
I want to apologize to Ryan Szymanski for not being able to fit him in tonight, but Parks went along with his stories, and we will try and get Ryan on next time. We always appreciate him standing by, though. But again, our apologies.
Find a hole for him to climb into, and he'll show up.
Yeah. And for audio versions of this podcast, search for Museum Ship Mafia on your favorite podcast platform. Final thoughts, guys, before we shut this down?
No, we just look forward to the 18th of May, which will then be the Velos and Charette. And then, so yeah, as we had all said before, there's 4 more of these podcasts about the Fletchers for the year of the Fletchers. So we're happy and hope you guys join us.
The 18th of May, which is a Thursday. So mark that.
Oh man,
calendar.
That's when. Oh my God, that's when this longest night at the museum thing is. Oh, we're gonna have to talk about that with the World of Warships. Oh my God, I'll see if we can get it done during the day. All right, I'll have to make a note of that.
We'll figure it out. Stay tuned for a
no. This takes priority here. So.
Yeah, stay tuned for that date and time. Thank God Connor says he's available. So that's one name we can put a check mark next to. So we'll get that.
Shut the basement door. Leave him down there. That's good.
All right. If there isn't anything else, I just want to say thanks to everyone for tuning in tonight. Of course, we cannot do this without subscribers and viewers, so we appreciate you tuning in and learning all there is to know about the namesakes for the Fletcher-class destroyers. Final mention, as I said, the Buffalo Naval Park, check out their YouTube channel. The USS Slater, check out their YouTube channel. The USS Kidd Veterans Museum, their YouTube channel. It's simple. I always say one of the best ways to support these guys and the work that they do is simply click like and subscribe. If there isn't anything else, I'll simply say that my name is Ken Stano with the YouTube channel History X. We definitely thank you for tuning in tonight, and thanks for watching.
Yay.